Afghanistan has long been considered one of the most difficult places on earth to conquer. Over the centuries, many powerful empires and nations have attempted to control this mountainous, rugged land, only to face overwhelming resistance that has prevented them from fully subjugating the country. From the ancient armies of Alexander the Great to the modern forces of the United States, Afghanistan has withstood invasions, yet no one has been able to permanently conquer it. But what makes Afghanistan so unyielding to foreign domination? What is it about this land that has made it impossible for so many powerful nations to hold it? In this video, we will explore the historical, geographical, cultural, and social factors that contribute to Afghanistan's legendary resistance to foreign invaders. Conquering Afghanistan has been a challenge for every nation that has tried to subjugate it throughout history. The country's harsh terrain, complex tribal structures, and deeply ingrained cultural values have made it one of the most difficult places on earth to conquer and hold. From the time of Alexander the Great to the British Empire, and more recently, the Soviet Union and the United States, Afghanistan has proven itself nearly impossible to fully conquer. To understand why, we must look at the history, geography, and the spirit of the Afghan people, all of which contribute to the nation's ability to resist foreign domination. The first thing that makes Afghanistan so difficult to conquer is its geography. The country is landlocked and surrounded by high mountain ranges, including the Hindu Kush, which divide the nation into distinct regions. These mountains are not just physical barriers, they are cultural and strategic ones, making it difficult for invaders to navigate and establish control. Even today, with advanced military technology, the ruggedness of the land presents significant challenges for large armies. The high altitudes, harsh winters, and lack of proper roads mean that any invading force has to deal with logistical nightmares, which drain resources and morale. This terrain also gives native forces a significant advantage, as they know the land intimately and can easily disappear into the mountains when necessary. Throughout history, foreign powers have underestimated the difficulty of fighting in such a terrain. Alexander the Great, one of the greatest military leaders in history, conquered much of the known world, yet Afghanistan proved to be a challenge he could not fully overcome. While he was able to defeat local forces, the mountainous regions and harsh conditions made it nearly impossible for him to fully integrate the region into his empire. His forces were constantly harassed by local resistance fighters, who would often launch guerrilla attacks before disappearing into the mountains. This pattern of resistance became a recurring theme for every foreign power that would later try to conquer Afghanistan. The British Empire, during the 19th century, is perhaps one of the most notable examples of failed attempts to conquer Afghanistan. The British, who were seeking to expand their influence in the region during the Great Game with Russia, invaded Afghanistan twice, once in 1839 and again in 1878. In both instances, the British forces were faced with fierce resistance from Afghan tribes. The British tried to impose their own form of governance, but the local tribes, who were fiercely independent and had no interest in foreign rule, fought back. The mountainous terrain once again provided them with an advantage, as Afghan fighters would use it to launch ambushes on the British supply lines and troops. In the end, the British had to retreat both times, with heavy casualties and little to show for their efforts. One of the key reasons why Afghanistan has been so difficult to conquer is the deeply entrenched tribal and ethnic divisions within the country. Afghanistan is made up of many different ethnic groups, including Pashtuns, Tajiks, Hazaras, and Uzbeks, each with their own distinct languages, cultures, and traditions. These groups have a long history of internal conflict, but they also share a fierce sense of independence and pride in their tribal identity. When a foreign power invades Afghanistan, these groups often put aside their differences and unite against the invader, making it difficult for any one power to successfully control the country. The tribal structure of Afghan society also means that there is no single leader or central authority to negotiate with. Any invading force that tries to establish control will find itself having to deal with the fragmented and decentralized political system, where loyalty is to the tribe, not to a national government. The resistance to foreign occupation in Afghanistan is not just a matter of geography or tribalism, it is deeply tied to the culture and traditions of the Afghan people. Afghanistan has a long history of independence, and the people have a strong sense of national pride. Over the centuries, they have developed a culture of resistance that has been passed down through generations. This culture is deeply rooted in their history, from the battles against Alexander the Great to the more recent struggles against the Soviet Union and the United States. The Afghan people have a strong connection to their land, and they view foreign invaders as an existential threat to their way of life. As a result, they are willing to fight and die to protect their homes, families, and traditions. This sense of resistance is not just a physical battle, it is a psychological and emotional one as well. The Afghan people view themselves as the guardians of their land, and they see the foreign invaders as an affront to their honor and dignity. During the Soviet invasion in the 1980, the Afghan resistance, known as the Mujahideen, received support from the United States, Pakistan, and other countries. The Mujahideen were able to use the terrain to their advantage, launching ambushes and attacks on Soviet forces, often making use of hit-and-run tactics. The Soviet Union, despite its superior military technology, was unable to quell the resistance, and after nearly a decade of fighting, the Soviets withdrew in 1989, defeated and exhausted. The Afghan people had once again demonstrated their ability to repel a foreign invader. The United States' involvement in Afghanistan, which began in 2001 after the September 11 attacks, followed a similar pattern. The U.S. military, with its vast technological superiority, was able to quickly overthrow the Taliban government and destroy much of its infrastructure. However, the long-term goal of pacifying the country and establishing a stable, Western-backed government proved elusive. The Taliban, despite being ousted from power, quickly regrouped in the rural areas and the border regions, where they received support from local tribes. The mountainous terrain once again played a key role in the resistance, as the Taliban fighters were able to use the caves and valleys to hide from U.S. forces. The U.S. military, despite its technological advantages, found it difficult to maintain control of the country, especially in rural areas where tribal loyalties and the desire for independence were deeply entrenched. One of the key challenges faced by foreign powers in Afghanistan is the inability to win the hearts and minds of the local population. Despite the best efforts of the US and NATO forces to win over the Afghan people through aid, infrastructure projects, and counterinsurgency operations, there has always been a significant degree of distrust toward foreign powers. This distrust is rooted in the long history of foreign intervention in Afghanistan, as well as in the cultural and political differences between the Afghan people and the invading forces. Many Afghans view the foreign presence as an occupation, and they are unwilling to support a government that is seen as being propped up by outside powers. This lack of support from the local population makes it difficult for any foreign power to establish long-term control over the country. In addition to this, the cost of occupation is immense. The U.S. spent trillions of dollars over 2 decades trying to stabilize Afghanistan, yet the country remained embroiled in conflict. Corruption within the Afghan government, which was heavily reliant on foreign aid and military support, further hampered efforts to build a stable state. The Afghan security forces, while well-equipped, were often poorly trained and lacked the cohesion and motivation needed to fend off insurgents. In the end, the United States' withdrawal in 2021, after nearly 2 decades of involvement, demonstrated the futility of trying to conquer Afghanistan. The Taliban quickly regained control of the country, showing that foreign powers could never fully control Afghanistan. Another factor that makes Afghanistan so difficult to conquer is the lack of a clear, unified opposition to foreign forces. While the various ethnic groups in Afghanistan may unite against a common enemy, they are often divided among themselves. This fragmentation makes it difficult for any one group to exert control over the entire country. It also means that any foreign power must contend with the complex and ever-changing political landscape, where alliances shift and loyalties are constantly in flux. This lack of a stable opposition makes it difficult for invaders to maintain control, as they are constantly faced with shifting allegiances and new challenges. In the modern world, with advanced technology and vast military resources, one might think that conquering Afghanistan would be an easier task. However, history has shown that technological superiority alone is not enough to conquer a nation. The Afghan people have demonstrated time and again that they are willing to fight and die to protect their land and their independence. The challenges of the terrain, the tribal divisions, the deep-seated cultural resistance, and the lack of support from the local population all combine to make Afghanistan a land that has proven nearly impossible to conquer. At the end, the reasons why it is impossible to conquer Afghanistan are manifold. The geography of the country, with its rugged mountains and harsh terrain, makes it difficult for invaders to establish control. The deeply ingrained tribal and ethnic divisions within the country ensure that any foreign force will face stiff resistance from the local population. The strong sense of national pride and cultural resistance among the Afghan people makes them unwilling to accept foreign rule. Finally, the lack of support from the local population and the immense cost of occupation make it nearly impossible for any foreign power to maintain control over the country in the long term. Afghanistan's history, culture, and geography have combined to create a nation that is resistant to conquest, and any foreign power that attempts to subjugate it will find itself faced with an insurmountable challenge. Afghan people have always made it nearly impossible for any foreign force to truly control the country. Afghanistan's story is a testament to the resilience of its people, and it serves as a reminder that some lands are simply too tough, too proud, and too complex to be subdued by any external power.